Well, so if the government can print unlimited amounts of money, why do they collect taxes? You pay high taxes only to uphold the illusion that you are funding the government, which you are not. The government is funded by money printing, paper backed with paper. Confidence in your currency will be lost. The dollar will fall.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen across our beautiful country of Canada, our friends around the world in the known and unknown universe. Welcome back to your favorite angry Canadian. Oh, I got a surprise for you. I'm pissed off again, very, very pissed off. On the second day of March 2024. Yeah. Very, very pissed off. If you've seen a couple of my videos, you know that I've been talking about cars, specifically used cars. And here in British Columbia, our beloved government puts a 12% tax on buying a vehicle, used vehicle. I don't know if it's any higher for new vehicles, but 12% tax. And if you look up on Auto Trader or wherever you go, some of the older cars have been sold 3, 4, 5 times or more. Every fucking time they're sold, the government reaches in your pocket and takes money out. What the... I'm sorry, I'm swearing. What the fuck for are they doing this? And why are people so stupid and useless as to allow it? Now, I realize, and I, going to correct that individually there's not a hell of a lot we can do. But united, it doesn't matter if it's in British Columbia or across Canada or in California or wherever, Europe, if people unite, we can bring the mother truckers down one after another. And if anyone is campaigning on the bullshit, it's time to put their campaign out of business. You know how much taxes we pay on everything? Now imagine a car selling 3 or 4 times. A $32,000 car here in British Columbia has a tax of 12%. That's just about $4,000 that you pay for the privilege of buying something for yourself that you already worked to pay for. So you're working, you're paying for that. You're working, you got to pay rent. You got to pay gas. Everything is taxes, taxes, taxes. I am sick and bloody well tired of that, and we need people to unite. I mean, I love the president of El Salvador about what he said about taxes. Just makes people think that they're, helping, like our taxes pay for cleaning up the environment and for doing this and doing that and schools. And our taxes are paying fucking interest rate in the billions on money the government throws away. Throws it away. We got little Chrystia Freeland here in Canada, who is the Deputy Prime Minister, Minister of Finance. She's on the Board of Trustees of the World Economic Forum, and she has an expense account of $6,000 a month to keep her image, style, hair, whatever the hell it's spent on. $6,000 a month. When most Canadians are living paycheck to fucking paycheck. It's time for a revolution, I say. What do you think about that? Are you gonna one day wake up and realize that they can take their taxes and shove it where the sun don't shine? I hear Trudeau talking that, people are angry, people are mean, they're getting nasty. Why the hell is that, Trudeau?
I'm wearing my Ukraine tie, my Ukraine pin. I'm even wearing Ukraine underwear. They're over my diaper right now. I think Jill even put on my Ukraine socks. I'm a big fan. The clock is ticking. Every week, every month that passes without new aid Ukraine means fewer dollars to Hunter, fewer dollars to my brother Jim, fewer dollars to line the pockets of the Biden crime family. Just what Putin wants. Ukrainians are fighting bravely. You know, many of you look around the room here have also made money like this for a long time. I pulled together a coalition of over 50 politicians to get kickbacks on the phone talking to these leaders. We need to fund Ukraine. Remember, folks, this is a money laundering scheme. Well, we need to work together and actually increase the size of my bank accounts. We can't walk away now. That's what Putin's betting on.
Well, I gotta attach a disclaimer to this, and that is, this is not real. You know, but there are videos out there that are real. And I think for most part, people are smart enough to be able to tell the difference. Maybe that's going to change with AI, but...
Amy, it says you are trained in technology. That's very good. Are you adept at Excel?
No.
PowerPoint?
No.
Publisher?
Not really.
Exactly in what area of technology are you proficient?
Snapchat, Pinterest, Instagram, Vine, Twitter. You know, the big ones.
The West, especially those who claim to care about human rights, we must accept that we have now proven beyond dispute that we never cared as countries, as polities, as establishments, as media about human rights. We only cared about our human rights and the human rights of our friends, of our bastards, right? If you are not one of us, you don't have human rights. You can be bombed, you're never killed. Even if we kill you, you die. Whenever they...
What he's referencing there, most of you probably already caught it, is when he says, when we kill you, we didn't kill you. He's talking about the articles. He's talking about the mainstream media. He's talking about the spokespeople for the Biden White House or the Netanyahu. When we kill you, we didn't kill you. You just died. He's talking about how they always do the passive voice. I've done segments on this before where they use the passive voice. They say Gazans died from explosions or Gazans found dead. They use the passive voice. They use this cryptic stuff acting like, well, how did they die? Who knows? I don't know. They just showed up dead. When they showed up to the party, they were dead. So that's what he's referencing there a little. He kind of glazes over it, but.
That, of course, is Lee Camp from... Well, he's a comedian and a social commentator, you know, kind of like George Carlin. But Lee Camp was and had a program on RT, you know, Russian TV that was broadcast to us in the West to mess with our minds because, well, we don't know what's real or not. How the hell should we know when our own government lies to us? I mean, would there be like a beauty pageant for who can lie the most, which government, which official? Perhaps we could call it Misinformation 2024. Yes, coming to you from the lying capital of the world, Washington, D.C., or Beijing, China, or Moscow, Russia, or London, England. Oh, shit, man, liars are everywhere. We need more George Carlins, but he's gone, sorry to say.
The energy policies that were created here in California, not as a result of a conspiracy, but because...
You don't need a formal conspiracy when interests converge. These people went to the same universities and fraternities. They're on the same boards of directors. They're in the same country clubs. They have like interests. They don't need to call a meeting. They know what's good for them, and they're getting it. And there used to be 7 oil companies. There are now 3. It will soon be 2. The things that matter in this country have been reduced in choice. There are 2 political parties. There are a handful of insurance companies. There are about 6 or 7 information things. But if you want a bagel, there are 23 flavors because you have the illusion. You have the illusion of choice. Right. You don't get the real important choice. There's no freedom of choice. That's a great point.
You pay high taxes only to uphold the illusion that you are funding the government, which you are not. The government is funded by money printing, paper backed with paper.
Never before has the West's image around the world been so terrible. What is happening is, at once, in the West, opinion, public opinion, conventional wisdom is solidifying its support for Israel's genocide, but the rest of the world is becoming more and more disillusioned with the so-called principles or ethical dimension of the Western polity, of the Western way of thinking.
It's really interesting what he's saying there, that the consensus is being solidified among Western states, U.S.-led, really it's the U.S. empire, but Western states in general. The consensus is being solidified among the governing bodies to endorse this genocide by Israel. That is what's happening. We're seeing a heavy push for that, a massive push for that. But you've got 63% or 65% or whatever of the United States saying that that we need a ceasefire. But even beyond that, even if you ignore the United States, 80% of this world lives in countries that are opposed to this genocide, opposed to Israel, opposed to what's going on here. The consensus of the world is to be against this. And it is being revealed to the world much of what the U.S. stands for. And I know that you guys are smart. Most of you were like, I already knew what the U.S. stood for. But there are many who do not follow the day-to-day actions of the day-to-day machinations of your U.S. political elite, etc. And so I feel it is being revealed more than ever what it is that the U.S. and Western countries stand for, and it is being revealed because of this genocide. The hidden agenda is that human rights don't matter at all. Human rights don't matter at all to the ruling elite of this empire. The hidden agenda is that mass murder of children, no less, mass murder is fine and just when done against the enemies of the U.S./Israeli empire. The hidden agenda is that there is no international order or laws that matter to the ruling elite at all. The hidden agenda is that the ruling elite can literally bomb children, women, innocent people. They can starve children to death and call it justice and jump up and down and say, look at the justice we're enacting as we starve children. It really is unbelievable. It's an unbelievable and dystopian level of cognitive dissonance that they're trying to force onto people. They're trying to get us to turn against our own souls and think that starving children is okay or bombing children is acceptable. No matter what bullshit reasons they cocked up, they concoct. I mean, they are cocking this up, but whatever they concoct, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. But they want us to believe, oh, no, it does, because thing we made up about October 7th. I mean, it is just unbelievable. I want to give you a quote here from Caitlin Johnstone's recent article. She said, the propaganda machine is the linchpin of their power, of the Western U.S. empire power. It's what holds the empire together. Without the ability to manipulate the public at a mass scale, our rulers cannot rule. I hope that we're seeing the cracking of this bullshit agenda that they try to tell us is their agenda, right? The U.S. will tell you, well, we're trying to create peace around the world. We're trying to help people around the world. We're trying to pull people out of poverty around the world. We're trying to help, I already said help people, but we're trying to create a just world. And of course, it's all laughable. That's what they want you to believe. I'm hopeful that we're seeing it crack apart into a million pieces.
Unbelievable is a term I think many people think about or refer to about what's happening globally now. And the other thing you should think about is that if it's not stopped now, it's gonna be too late. What do you think the future has in store?
This was the slaughter known as the First World War. 16 millions died and 21 million were wounded. At the height of the carnage, the Prime Minister of Great Britain, David Lloyd George, had a private chat with the editor of The Guardian, C.P. Scott, If people really knew the truth, said the Prime Minister, the war would be stopped tomorrow. But of course they don't know and can't know. The British public were desperate for real news. More than half the nation flocked to see an official propaganda film, The Battle of the Somme. Cameras were so unusual that young troops would shout, "Hello, Mum," as they marched to the front, and they were heard crying for their mothers as they died on the battlefield. This was almost never reported. These days we have 24-hour news. The sound bites never stop, and the wars never stop. Iraq, Afghanistan, Palestine.
John Pilger passed away December 30th, 2023 in London, England at age 84. I've followed him. You know, he used to appear a lot on this foreign propaganda network. I think it was called RT, Russia Today. You know, they used to just fuck with people's minds with truth. Oh, you can't handle the truth. No, I'm not going nuts. I'm just getting so frustrated. I want to see a friggin' revolution start while there is still the opportunity to do so.
As Russia's invasion approaches its second grim anniversary, Ukraine continues to struggle. The latest loss, the city of Avdiivka falling to Moscow.
Canada has a responsibility to help Ukraine win back its territory.
The defense minister announced what form Ottawa's new help will take. Some 800 drones worth nearly $100 million from a previously announced assistance package, capable of surveillance as well as carrying small payloads of munitions.
We work very closely with Ukrainian industry, Ukrainian military, and their government to determine what they need.
Hey, you dumb fuck, maybe they need peace. Think about that. You know, you see the videos of the towns, cities totally destroyed, and yes, Russian missiles did that, or drones, or whatever, but peace is both sides, and Russia has said it's ready to negotiate. But Zelensky said, no, I will never sit down with the Russians. Never, never, never. And they're going to have to pull right back everywhere. And then we're going to become part of NATO and EU. And, it's just the perfect world. What a load of shit. You know, it's very enraging to see Canada up to its knees in this shit. And it's costing billions of taxpayers' funds. That's where the money comes from.
But Ukraine needs more than just drones. It was forced to ration ammunition as Russia swept through Avdiivka.
Keeping Ukraine in the artificial deficit of weapons, particularly in deficit of artillery and long-range capabilities, allows Putin to adapt to the current intensity of the war.
I have as much respect for Zelensky as he has for me. Mind you, I could even say that about Ursula von der Leyen in EU or Klaus, a lot of them. I have no respect for them, and they have no respect for me because they've never friggin' heard of me yet. I think they should hear about every one of us out there who are opposing them. And there's a hell of a lot more of us than them. And then we have our little ditzy Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, pledging more money because it's not his. He's not pulling it out of his wallet, his pocket, his bank account. He's taking it away from us in education, in healthcare, in infrastructure, all the things. The money has to go to Ukraine and Zelensky.
And let's go back now to Ukraine, where the Prime Minister is speaking.
The war to last this long, no one expected that Ukraine would withstand Putin's army, but as Ukraine has proven over and over again, Putin made a grave miscalculation, and Ukraine still stands. Zczerny wmerla Ukraina. Volodymyr, you are leading the battle against autocracy and the battle to preserve the peace and security that our world is built on. So today, Canada and Ukraine have completed negotiations and have signed a historic new bilateral security cooperation agreement. As part of our agreement, we're committing over $3 billion of critical military and financial support to Ukraine in 2024. The new military support builds on what we've provided since 2022 and continue to provide, and it includes significant support for the armoured coalition, which is an area of Canadian strength and will allow us to continue to demonstrate leadership amongst our coalition partners, and support to the Air Force coalition, building on our commitment in July. There will also be ongoing support over several years because we are here for the long term. There will also be ongoing support over several years because we are here for the long term. There will also be ongoing support over several years because we are here for the long term. There will also be ongoing support over several years because we are here for the long term to help Ukraine win a decisive victory against Putin's unprovoked illegal invasion.
There was a show a long time ago, used to have a video store. It was called I Spit on Your Grave. Now they've made redos of it, but the original was pretty nasty. Well, I spit on Trudeau's lies. The friggin' guy lies. And think about this now. It's so lovely. We're going to give billions and billions of cash to Ukraine, which they can do with, I guess, as they want. We're not looking into how the money is spent and distributed, where it goes. Have real accounting. Same with the weapons. We're not doing that. And the beauty of it is, once the weapons arrive, they're gone. They blew up. You know, they got, the soldiers died, and we couldn't recover the guns or the grenades. Oh, they're just gone. And all those artillery shells, shit, man. We just keep throwing them out there, shooting them, and they blow up. And once they blow up, well, you can't do anything with it, so we got to get more of that. Thank God, you know, that there are countries that are supporting the destruction and death of Ukraine to the bitter end. And if you think that when, and eventually the conflict will end, when it ends, that we will be brought in for rebuilding. Now, you want to see a lot of money go wasted and get, you know, corrupted off and stolen. Wait till the rebuilding starts. And you know who's the first one in line? BlackRock. Get ready, folks. It's not over.
I'm wearing my Ukraine tie, my Ukraine pin. I'm even wearing Ukraine underwear. They're over my diaper right now. I think Jill even put on my Ukraine socks. I'm a big fan. The clock is ticking. Every week, every month that passes without new aid Ukraine means fewer dollars to Hunter, fewer dollars to my brother Jim, fewer dollars to line the pockets of the Biden crime family. Just what Putin wants. Ukrainians are fighting bravely. You know, many of you look around the room here have also made money like this for a long time. I pulled together a coalition of 50 politicians to get kickbacks on the phone talking to these leaders. We need to fund Ukraine. Remember, folks, this is a money laundering scheme. Well, we need to work together and actually increase the size of my bank accounts. We can't walk away now. That's what Putin's betting on.
All I'd like is a good oiling. Oh, could we start with my shoulders?
Ladies and gentlemen, to avoid any confusion, please note that the previous video was deep fake. It was somebody having some fun, and now it's been classified as, well, maybe deep fake. And that means that the government's going to have to implement more censorship rules on the Internet of Things, you know, because that's where it all begins. Because, you know, up until we had internet and social media, that came in 2004. I couldn't even believe it. It's very, like 20 years old, social media, but here we go, squirreling off somewhere. But the government will have a great reason to take away social media freedoms and rights. And you know that with an election coming in the US, coming across Europe for the EU, and then eventually here in Canada, it's going to be tricky. And today's broadcast will end with an explanation by Robert F. Kennedy Jr. about the Ukraine war and what happened, and why it wasn't that Putin had a headache or didn't feel good, indigestion, diarrhea, and got pissed off and decided to start a war. No, there's a lot of things behind it. We don't know that because our media, which used to, investigate and tell the truth, is sitting on Justin Trudeau's lap and just loving that.
Let me just tell you kind of the lead up, what happened in the lead up of the Ukraine war. The Ukraine war, we were lied to because we're told, oh yeah, this evil Putin trying to take over Europe, and this is his first step to reestablishing the Soviet Empire. And that, it's the same comic
book. And is that a
book.
lie?
Yeah, it's the same comic book description we were given of Saddam Hussein in Iraq, which we were just lied into a war. And yeah, it was a slam dunk that he had weapons of mass destruction. Of course he didn't, and he had nothing to do with terrorism. And he was running the most progressive nation in the Mideast. It was a secularized nation. It wasn't a theocracy. He wouldn't let people.
And I will agree that maybe in hindsight that was a mistake. But
all right,
Putin,
then let me tell you what happened. The real story behind what happened in Ukraine. And let me go back to 1992, because 1992 the walls come down, the Berlin Wall comes down, and Gorbachev does something very courageous. He goes to Tony Blair and George Bush, and he says, I'm going to allow you to do something that nobody in their right mind would do, which is I'm going to remove 450,000 Russian troops from East Germany, and I'm going to allow you to unify East Germany under NATO, which is a hostile army. But I want one commitment from you. You will never move NATO further to the east. James Baker, who was then Secretary of State, famously said to him, we will not move NATO 1 inch to the east. So then, 5 years later, 1997, Zbigniew Brzezinski, who was the first of the neocons, comes along and proposes, let's move NATO to right up to the Russian borders. We're into 15 nations, okay? And at that time, the most important diplomats in American history at that time were George Kennan, who was the architect of the containment policy during the Cold War. He said, if you do that, you're going to force, this is crazy, it's insane. Russia just lost the Cold War. We should be giving them a Marshall Plan and integrating them into the civilized society, the Western society. Don't make them an enemy. Don't treat them like they're still an enemy. This is going to force a violent military response from Russia if you do that. Bill Pierce, who was then the Secretary of Defense, threatened Clinton that he would resign if they went ahead with this plan because it was so reckless. And Bill Pierce is now the head of the CIA. Bill Perry, who was the U.S. ambassador to Russia at the time, said the same thing. Why are you doing this? This is crazy. So between now and then, we moved NATO into 14 countries. Why do we move NATO in? Because when you move them into a new country, they have to sign a contract that conforms all their weapons purchases to NATO specifications, which means you have to buy the weapons from Northrop Grumman, from these big U.S. military contractors who profit from war. So we move it there. In the meantime, we walk away unilaterally from 2 nuclear weapons treaties with Russia. Russia wants those treaties. They're intermediate range missile systems that, which destabilizes Europe when we remove our agreement not to fire missiles on Russia. And we put Aegis missile systems, which are nuclear capable, in Romania and Poland.
But the broad stroke, listen, you know the details, and these details are, and I'm not taking a side on this, but if there was any, which a lot of people aren't really advocates of, but Trump, if anything, kind of, and whether he was a puppet or not, whatever you believe, he kind of normalized the Russian relationship, kind of, right, by becoming somewhat of a friend of Putin's. So between that time and the time that Putin, there was no NATO movement between the time after the Trump administration.
Yeah, well, what we did is then we overthrew the government of Ukraine.
So no, he came into Ukraine before.
We overthrew the government in 2014. USAID, which has spent $5 billion, which is a front for the CIA, which everybody acknowledges, went in there and started a revolution it's called the Maidan Rebellion, where there was these protests that ended with the overthrow of the elected government of Ukraine that wanted to keep Ukraine neutral. Yanukovych wanted to keep NATO neutral. We wanted a pro-U.S. government. So we went in there in 2014, overthrew their government, and placed a government. And by the way, a month before the overthrow, we now have tapes that you can go on the internet and listen to. Victoria Nuland, who's the head of the neocons now, the deputy director of the State Department, choosing the new Ukrainian cabinet that will be put in place after the coup that was still a month away. So she knew the coup was coming a month in advance.
But who is she to us?
She's us. She's the head of the State Department. She's now, number 3 in the State Department. But she's been in the State Department. She's one of the, she runs the neocon program, which is, continual wars. So we then pick a new government. The new government comes in, immediately begins attacking the people of Donbass and Lugansk, who are Russian-speaking ethnic Russians. They banned the Russian language, there was 2 languages, there were 2 official languages. Ukraine, they banned that. Violence immediately erupts, and they kill 14. There's a civil war. This war started in 2014. There's 14,000 ethnic Russians are killed. And Putin kept saying, you're killing our people. He's trying to get a peace agreement. They finally work out a peace agreement called the Minsk Accords. Germany signs onto it, France signs onto it, England signs onto it, and Russia signs onto it. Zelensky runs in 2019 as president. He has one platform issue. He's a comedian and an actor, which I'm not.
Is there anything wrong with that?
Oh, my wife is one of those.
Okay, all right.
But he never had any political experience.
Right.
And he wins with 70% of the vote. Why? Because he runs on a peace platform. I'm going to sign the Minsk Accords. As soon as he gets in there, Victoria Nuland and the ultra-nationalists, which is a nice way of describing the people who run that government now, tell him that he can't do it. He can't sign it. So he pivots. And then Putin then says, okay, Putin is now faced with this problem. The United States government is now running the government of Ukraine. And he is frightened to death that the U.S. Navy is going to go into Vladivostok, which is, the southern port. It's been the Russian port. It's the only warm water port Russia has for 347 years. So he then goes right into Ukraine because into Crimea, and takes Crimea without firing a shot. Doesn't kill a single person because the people of Crimea are ethnic Russian and want him back, want him in there. Donbass and Lugansk then votes 90 to 10 to join Russia. Putin says, no, I don't want you. I want Ukraine to be a functioning state. But let's sign the Minsk Accords. And they won't sign it. So then he sends in 40,000 troops. I'm almost done with this. Okay. He sends in 40,000 troops. That is not somebody who wants to conquer Ukraine. It's a nation of 44 million people. All he wanted was us back at the negotiating table. Zelensky, we will not help Zelensky negotiate. So he goes to Israel and gets Naftali Bennett and Erdogan in Turkey to sponsor negotiations, and they go and they work out a peace agreement. And they sign it in April of 2022. Putin is withdrawing his troops according to this peace agreement, already starts withdrawing them. Biden sends over Tony Blair and tells Zelensky to rip up the peace agreement. Now, how do we know this? Because all of the negotiators are now talking, including Naftali Bennett, and you can look it up when you're on the internet. You say you spend a lot of time.
I do.
Look at his speech where he tells you what happened. The lead Ukrainian negotiator this week came clean and said, yeah, that's what happened. Oh, of course, Russia's been invaded 3 times through Ukraine. The last time.
So is Russia the good guy in your mind?
No, Russia, it was illegal what Russia did. We have to understand they don't want this war. We wanted the war.
So let me.